Hi folks, this is all the fruit, and here I have the Deutsche Eiche, or the German oak. However, when you are in Britain, it's called the English oak. Well, it's an oak species which is quite widespread throughout Europe, basically almost everywhere except for some of the hot Mediterranean areas and some of the really cold Russian and Scandinavian areas. So present almost everywhere in Europe and in some parts of Anatolia. And so, yeah, it has always been a very important tree for Europeans since the Stone Age. Because before the arrival of agriculture in Europe, actually acorns were the main source of starch and flour and stuff like this for many European peoples. Acorns were incredibly important for food even after agriculture got introduced. They were still eaten on a on a daily basis, and even nowadays millions of Europeans rely on acorns for food without even knowing it. There are still huge areas, especially in Spain and Portugal, where millions of pigs are being driven into the oak forests, usually other oak species, not this one, and are being fattened up on acorns. Incredibly important tree, so important that it's considered that even since the Middle Ages the oak was favored compared to other forest trees in Europe, and so it was basically, well, the trees were sown by spreading the acorns, and also since they adapted quite easily to being cut down all the time, they kind of spread compared to beeches and conifers and so on. So very important tree, yet the acorns were one of the most important uses. Of course timber, but also the bark was used because of the high tannin content. Actually, around the city of Heidelberg and the mountains around Heidelberg, basically in the last couple hundred years, oaks really reached any size where you could use timber for construction or stuff. They were cut down well, they were basically as thick as a human arm. Their bark was peeled for the manufacture of leather. No, they did not make leather from the bark, they tanned the leather with the bark, and then the stems were sold as firewood. Yeah, and whenever there is a famine somewhere in areas where oaks grow, related species and related genera grow all the way to the tropical rainforest. Wherever there is a famine or some hunter-gatherer situation, people always remember that you can actually eat acorns after leaching. However, now we are in spring, in April, so no acorns. How can you use the oak for food in spring? Well, the sources of using oaks in spring are a little bit scarce. I haven't found much about tapping them. It seems that other trees like maples, birches, and even grapevines and walnut trees have been more commonly tapped than acorns. Well, a lot of trees have soft and palatable and actually quite tasty leaves and young sprouts in spring. It's nice and aromatic and sour and savory, but it has some astringency to it, so I wouldn't eat it in large amounts. Yeah, mixing a couple oak leaves or young stems into young twigs into a salad could be okay. although they're usually not being eaten due to their high tannin content. But unlike the leaves of like beeches or hawthorn or roses or even brambles, I would say those are a little bit too astringent. But today I'm mainly after the catkins. They have started flowering. There is already a little bit of pollen on every surface, but most of them are still more or less in the budding stage. In a couple of days they will start. Well, actually it's so warm today that I'm sure that even today a lot more of them will open and spread their pollen. So I couldn't find too much on the pollen being eaten by humans. Insects eat it. Well, there are a lot of insects on the oak. By the way, the oak as well as the linden, they are the trees with the highest number of insects and animals living on them. I think even there was one study where they found like 1,000 insects living inside and on top of galls in oaks. So very popular with insects, and insects also eat pollen on the catkins. Also in North America, gray squirrels seem to love the young catkins of, of the white oak. And there are some records that in hungry times the catkins have been dried and used for flour or mixed into different foods. Yeah, usually when you have something that's barely edible, you mix it with something that's edible to increase the amount. I'm not sure that this is always a good idea. Yeah, you feel like you are eating more, but actually, if the stuff is not edible on its own, and if it's not adding something like a specific structure or nutrient or taste or flavor, mixing it into something else in order to just increase the amount, yeah, makes you feel full but doesn't really nourish you. That can be nice nowadays when you want to lose weight, but in hungry historical times maybe more a placebo. There was a website that said use them as compost or mulch. Basically you can rake them and then put them directly on your veggie or flower or flower beds or on your around the roots of your trees. It seems that they are kind of nutritious and then they decompose quite quickly. But now I just want to do the most basic thing and try them. I don't think I've ever eaten oak catkins. The pretty closely related hazel catkins are actually edible, but they are not in season right now. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, somebody described them as they have the consistency of sawdust. Yes, they do. I think I like the peduncles better than the actual flowers. Yeah, the peduncles are nice and sour. No, slightly sour. Kind of edible, something you can nibble. Yeah, some the young parts of some plants you can nibble, of some you can't. For example, there is an Evonimus, tiny Evonimus tree here, which I wouldn't nibble anything from it because it's toxic. The oak, yeah, due to the tannins and fagins and stuff like that, it is kinda toxic, but not overly so. Just trying to decide whether I like the stuff. I mean, the crunchy, crisp texture is kind of interesting. Let's see if I can get the flowers without the peduncles. Oh, well, yeah, I would say you could put them in some wild spring salad or spring soup or something like that. Not too much, because remember the tannins. Yeah, like not really. Yeah, they are edible, but I wouldn't say they add too much to. They add too much to your meal. Yeah, a little bit tart. If it wasn't for the tartness, they would be more valuable. Yeah, I'm a little bit undecisive whether I should say completely discard them or just use them in small amounts so that the tannins don't affect you. Please tell me, folks, do you have any recollections of use of oak catkins? Have you ever used them? Have you ever read about them being used? Apart from that, stay tuned for a lot more fruit and mostly flower videos in the beautiful German spring. And if you want to receive more such content, it's not enough to subscribe to my channel, because YouTube kinda stopped recommending my videos, but you should rather press the little bell icon to be notified about new uploads.